The Dracor swarm had been slowed, but the war was far from over. Reports arrived daily of attacks on distant colonies. Even the smallest misstep could allow the swarm to regain strength. Sarilith and Daniel worked side by side, planning strategy and monitoring the Empire's borders. One morning, a messenger arrived with urgent news. A Dracor fleet had breached the defenses near the planet Arthenia, a vital mining world. The colony's population, both human and Zarathian, was at risk. Immediate action was required, but the enemy numbers were overwhelming. Sarilith's generals argued fiercely for a retreat. "We cannot save them all," one said. "It is wiser to preserve our fleets for stronger planets." Daniel shook his head. "If we abandon them, morale will collapse. The people need hope, and sometimes the impossible can be made possible with the right plan." Sarilith studied him. She knew his human way was unconventional, often risky, but she had seen him survive and win when others would have failed. "Tell me, Daniel, what do you propose?" He traced a line across the holographic map. "We divide our forces. A small strike team will land on Arthenia to protect civilians. Another group will lure the swarm's fleet into an ambush at the asteroid belt nearby. We hit them at the point they least expect. Timing and coordination will be our advantage." The generals were skeptical. "It is dangerous. The humans you propose will face near certain death." Daniel's eyes were steady. "Then they must rely on more than strength. They must rely on courage, trust, and quick thinking. These are strengths even the strongest warrior cannot ignore." Sarilith nodded slowly. She trusted him. "We will do as you say." The operation began at dusk. Daniel led the strike team personally. The planet's surface was scarred with craters and smoke, evidence of the swarm's initial attacks. Civilians hid wherever they could, terrified and desperate. Daniel moved among them with calm authority. "Stay close. Trust the instructions. No one panics under my command." As the Dracor descended in their massive ships, Daniel directed the small team with precision. They guided civilians into safe zones using natural terrain and temporary shelters to shield them from enemy fire. He moved quickly, sometimes standing in plain sight to draw the enemy's attention, calculating each risk with the careful judgment of a seasoned strategist. Sarilith watched from orbit, the pulse of her heart quickening. She had seen Daniel plan battles and survive traps, but now he risked his life on the ground, directly among the vulnerable. One soldier, a young Zarathian named Krell, glanced at Daniel nervously. "Captain, how do you remain calm?" Daniel crouched beside him. "Fear is natural, but it cannot control action. Look at what needs to be done. Focus on that. Courage is not the absence of fear. It is the choice to act anyway." Krell nodded slowly, inspired by the human's composure. Meanwhile, in the asteroid belt, the main fleet executed Daniel's second plan. As expected, the Dracor followed the baited fleet into the dense field of rocks. Hidden turrets and mines exploded around the enemy, causing chaos among their ranks. Small, fast ships darted in and out, striking the swarm's vulnerable points. Sarilith monitored the battle from her flagship. She had witnessed countless wars, but she had never seen strategy like this. Daniel's plan relied not on overwhelming force, but on timing, patience, and clever deception. He was turning the tide where conventional tactics had failed. Suddenly, a massive Dracor warship broke through the defenses, heading straight for Arthenia. Sarilith's heart leapt. That warship could destroy the strike team instantly. Daniel noticed it too. He grabbed a communicator. "Evacuate civilians to the secondary shelters." "I will hold the line." Sarilith's breath caught. "Daniel, no!" she shouted, but he ignored the warning. He directed his team to create barriers, lure the enemy into traps, and buy time. Explosions rocked the surface. Daniel moved swiftly, dodging debris and enemy fire, leading his team with unshakable calm. Minutes felt like hours. Finally, the Dracor warship was lured into a narrow canyon, where hidden explosives awaited. Daniel's plan worked. The ship was destroyed in a brilliant explosion, saving the colony and striking a major blow against the swarm. As the smoke cleared, civilians emerged from hiding, cheering. Zarathian and human soldiers alike looked to Daniel with newfound respect. Even the hardened generals of the Empire bowed their heads in acknowledgement. Sarilith descended to the planet herself. She found Daniel standing among the survivors, his uniform scorched but his spirit unbroken. "You risked everything," she said softly, her violet eyes searching his. "For them, And for the Empire, why? Daniel looked at her calmly. Because it was right. Humans fight for what they care about. Not for glory, not for power, but for life and hope. Courage is not measured in size or strength, it is measured in action. For a long moment, Sarilith was silent. She had always believed the strongest won through force, through fear, through dominance. But here in front of her eyes, a human had faced near certain death and saved countless lives with nothing but courage, wit, and heart. I underestimated you, she admitted, her voice low. I thought humans were fragile, limited, weak. I see now. I was wrong. Daniel smiled faintly. You judged us by appearances. Many do, but humans endure. We survive, and when we fight together, even the impossible can be achieved. Sarilith's lips curved into a small, proud smile. You have shown me something I never expected. Not just skill, not just courage, but wisdom. The real power of a human is not in their strength. It is in their heart, their choices, their will to act when all seems lost. Word of the victory spread throughout the Empire. The swarm, though still dangerous, had been slowed and weakened. Civilians and soldiers alike began to see humans not as fragile outsiders, but as capable allies and leaders. In the following days, Sarilith held counsel with Daniel by her side. Her trust in him had deepened beyond politics or necessity. She began to consult him not only on military matters, but on governance, diplomacy, and strategy. Even the nobles who had once scorned him could no longer deny his influence. Daniel's calm courage, quick thinking, and steadfast heart had united humans and Zerathians under a common cause. Late one evening, as the twin moons rose above the palace, Sarilith approached Daniel in the garden. I see now the truth, she said softly. You are not merely my husband. You are a protector, a guide, a leader in your own right. I was blind, but I see clearly now. Daniel looked at her with calm determination. The Empire survives because we stand together. Humans and Zerathians working as one. That is the real strength. Sarilith reached out and placed her hand on his. Then together we will face whatever comes next. I trust you completely, Daniel nodded. And I will never betray that trust. Not for the Empire. Not for you. Not for anyone. For the first time, the Queen felt a sense of calm she had never known. She had always relied on power, fear, and loyalty earned through dominance. Now she saw another kind of power, one born of courage, wisdom, and heart, and she realized with quiet awe that the human at her side had shown her what true leadership could be. The war was far from over, but the Empire had a new hope. Not because of ships or weapons or wealth, but because of a human's courage and the trust he inspired. The alien queen had finally seen the truth. Her husband, though human and fragile in appearance, carried a power greater than she had ever imagined, and that power would change the Empire forever. The Dracor swarm had regrouped, larger and more furious than before. Reports reached the palace that entire sectors of the Empire were under attack. Fear had begun to creep into the hearts of even the strongest generals. Queen Sarilith stood before her council, her violet eyes sharp with determination. Daniel stood beside her, calm as ever, studying the holographic map of the galaxy. His human perspective, once doubted, had now become the key to their survival. The swarm moves too quickly for our fleets alone, one general said. We will be overwhelmed. Daniel shook his head. Then we fight smarter, not harder. The swarm is powerful because it relies on numbers, on repetition, on predictability. We are neither predictable nor lacking in creativity. We will turn their strength into weakness. Sarilith studied him silently. She had seen his plans work before, but the scale of this threat was greater than anything they had faced, and yet she trusted him completely. Explain your strategy, she commanded. Daniel traced lines across the map, pointing to distant sectors. We cannot fight all fronts at once. We will focus on the swarm's key nodes, supply stations, energy fields, and central ships. Small strike teams, human and Zerathian together, will hit simultaneously. Confusion will spread in their ranks. Then our fleets can strike decisively. The generals exchanged uneasy glances. One whispered, "This is too risky." Daniel's eyes met theirs calmly. Risk is inevitable, but action guided by reason and courage can win where brute force cannot. The plan was set into motion. Across the galaxy, strike teams moved quietly, unseen by the Dracor. Daniel himself led one, guiding his team through asteroid fields and hidden corridors of space. Each movement was precise, calculated to cause maximum disruption with minimum loss. On a remote moon, Daniel and his squad prepared for a critical strike. The target was a Dracor energy hub, vital to their fleet's operation. Destroying it would cut off hundreds of enemy ships from power and resources. "Remember," Daniel said, crouched among the roast, not just fighting for Surrey. The palace of the Zarathian Empire was filled with uneasy tension. Even though Daniel had survived the trials, the warriors' whispers were louder now. Some nobles whispered of his cleverness, but others murmured of danger. A human had never held such influence in the empire before. For them, Daniel's presence was an uncomfortable disruption in the balance of power. One evening, as the sky above the palace burned with the pale light of twin moons, Daniel walked through the quiet corridors with a guard. The corridors, usually empty at this hour, felt alive with hidden eyes. Daniel had grown accustomed to the palace's strange silence, but tonight it felt different, thicker, heavy with anticipation. "Do you feel that, Captain?" The guard asked, his voice low. "Something is not right," Daniel nodded. "I feel it too. Humans trust instinct, and mine tells me danger is near." The warning came faster than he expected. In the quiet of his chambers, a shadow slid across the wall. Daniel barely had time to react. Two cloaked figures lunged at him with short blades gleaming in the dim light. Daniel dove aside, grabbing a heavy ceremonial vase. He swung it, knocking one attacker to the floor. The second raised his blade, aiming for Daniel's shoulder, but Daniel did not panic. He had no alien fighting training, but humans were survivors. Using a simple trick he had learned on Earth, Daniel tripped the attacker with a swift sweep of his leg. The two men fell, crashing into each other with a loud clang. The room was filled with dust and the sound of metal striking metal. By the time palace guards arrived, Daniel had already disarmed both men and tied them up with strips of fabric. His calm precision amazed the soldiers. Sarilith appeared moments later, her long silver robes brushing the floor. She surveyed the scene, her eyes sharp and calculating. "You survived," she said, her voice calm but edged with a hint of surprise. "How?" Daniel shrugged, wiping dust from his hands. "Humans survive by thinking fast and using what is around them. Fear slows us. Observation speeds us." For the first time, the Queen allowed herself a small smile. She had faced many enemies in her life, but few had stood against danger as calmly as this human had. The next morning, the palace was alive with rumors. Daniel's actions had not gone unnoticed. Some nobles whispered about the assassination attempt, fearing that the human might have enemies unknown to the Queen. Others began to doubt their own judgment. Sarilith called her council together again, her violet eyes fixed on Daniel. "It seems our court is not as secure as I believed," she said. "Captain Hayes, you have survived attempts on your life that even my guards feared. What do you propose?" Daniel studied the council table, tracing the lines of corridors and chambers. "We need to strengthen security around key areas. But more importantly, we need to know who is behind this. The attackers are skilled, but not Zarathian. Someone wants to weaken you through me." A few generals frowned. "And you think you can find them?" Daniel nodded. "Yes, humans use observation, questioning, and logic. We follow patterns others might miss." Sarilith's gaze softened. She had expected him to fail, to cry out for protection, but he had stepped forward with confidence instead. "Very well," she said. "We will see if your human instincts are as strong as you claim." Over the next few days, Daniel worked quietly. He observed the palace guards, noting subtle changes in behavior. He asked questions of the attendants, listening carefully to tone and hesitation. Slowly, a pattern began to emerge. The attacks were not random. They were orchestrated by a faction of nobles who had always resented the Queen's marriage to a human. Daniel reported his findings to Sarilith. "These nobles see me as a threat, not just to them, but to the old ways of this empire," he explained. "If we act carefully, we can protect you and prevent any open rebellion." Sarilith studied him in silence. "You are not just clever, human. You understand our politics better than some of my own generals. This impresses me," Daniel smiled faintly. "I have learned that strength comes in many forms. Sometimes courage alone is enough. Sometimes cleverness matters more than power." A week later, Daniel's predictions were put to the test. During a grand banquet in honor of visiting ambassadors, a noble attempted to poison Sarilith's drink. Daniel noticed a subtle movement, a hand brushing against the edge of a crystal cup, and acted instantly. He knocked the cup aside and grabbed the noble's arm, holding him firmly until guards arrived. The court erupted in shock. How had the human known? Saralith's eyes, however, were filled with a quiet satisfaction. Daniel had not only protected her life, but had done so with courage and quick thinking. You see now, Daniel said quietly to her. Humans may be small, but we notice what others miss. We act before it is too late. The Queen nodded, though she did not speak immediately. For days she had doubted him, wondered if he was truly worthy to stand beside her. Now she was beginning to see a truth that unsettled her pride. Humans were more capable than she had imagined. Even the rival nobles began to take notice. Daniel's calm bravery and intelligence were slowly earning respect. Whispers spread through the empire, the human is clever. The human survives. The human protects the Queen, yet danger was far from over. Daniel knew the attacks were only the beginning. The faction opposing him would not give up easily. And beyond the empire there were enemies he had not yet seen, creatures and forces that had terrorized planets before Zarathians ruled the stars. One evening, Saralith walked with Daniel in the palace gardens, the twin moons reflecting in the water below. You have surprised me, Daniel, she said softly. I believed humans were weak. I believed you would fail. Daniel looked at her steadily. I did not come here to fail, Your Majesty. I came to learn to survive and to help. Fear does not guide humans. It is our courage and our choices that define us. Saralith remained silent for a long moment. She had faced countless challenges in her life, yet this human stood before her with a confidence that no alien could match. Her respect for him grew with every passing day. Perhaps, she said finally, I underestimated you. Perhaps humans are stronger than even I imagined. Daniel smiled faintly. Strength is not only in muscle or firepower. It is in the mind, the heart, and the willingness to act when others hesitate. The Queen nodded, though she would not admit it openly to her court. She felt a new trust for Daniel, a trust born not of politics, but of courage and understanding, and deep within her a small, quiet thought formed. This human may not just be my husband. He may be the key to the survival of the empire. The palace had only just begun to settle from the failed plots of the nobles when new danger struck. A messenger ship arrived from the outer borders of the Zarathian Empire, battered and nearly destroyed. Its crew staggered into the throne hall, fear written across their faces. The Dracor swarm has returned, the captain gasped, kneeling before Queen Saralith. They have crossed into our territories. Planets burn, colonies fall. They do not speak. They do not bargain. They only consume. A heavy silence filled the chamber. The Dracor were not a normal enemy. They were an ancient terror, a hive of countless ships and soldiers driven by hunger and destruction. Even the proud Zarathians spoke of them with dread. The nobles shifted nervously. The generals tightened their jaws. But Daniel, standing beside Saralith, listened with sharp focus. Saralith's voice was calm but cold. Summon the War Council. The Empire will not fall without a fight. That evening, the War Council gathered around the glowing map of the galaxy. Red markers spread like a disease, showing the advance of the swarm. Whole sectors had been overrun in days. One general slammed his fist onto the table. We must meet them head on, gather our fleets and crush them before they spread further. Another shook his head. Impossible. Their numbers are endless. A direct battle will break us, the council argued fiercely, their voices rising. Finally, Saralith raised her hand, silencing them. Her eyes turned toward Daniel. What does the human say? All eyes shifted to him. Some sneered, expecting foolishness. Others waited with curiosity. Daniel studied the map for a long moment before speaking. If you fight them directly, you will lose. Their strength is in numbers. They overwhelm by sheer force. But even the strongest army has weaknesses. Tell me, how do the Dracor feed their swarm? What sustains them? A general answered reluctantly. They strip planets. They drain resources. Without new supplies, they weaken. Daniel nodded. Then do not fight their strength. Strike their hunger, destroy their supply lines, cut off the flow of resources, and the swarm will slow. The council muttered among themselves. Some dismissed the idea. Others looked uneasy. Daniel continued. On Earth, armies have fallen because they could not feed their soldiers. Even great empires crumbled when their supply lines were cut. You must not think like giants. You must think like hunters. Saralith leaned forward, her violet eyes locked on him. She could see the quiet fire in his words, the confidence of someone who had studied struggle and survival. Explain your plan, she ordered. Daniel outlined a series of strategies. Smaller fleets, striking supply convoys, decoys leading the swarm into traps, ambushes in asteroid fields. He spoke of fighting with patience, not brute force. It was a strange plan, but it had the sharp logic of survival. When he finished, the room was silent. At last, Sarilith spoke. "Very well. We will try the humans' way." The first battles were tense. Small fleets slipped thin paths, striking Q. Captain Daniel Hayes had always believed that space was endless, filled with secrets no human could ever fully know. His small exploration vessel, the Horizon Star, was proof of humanity's courage to step beyond Earth and reach for the unknown. But courage alone was not always enough. One moment, Daniel was charting a new trade route near the edge of the Zorathian Empire, and the next his ship was caught in a violent storm of plasma waves. His vessel broke apart, leaving him drifting into the gravity of an alien world. When Daniel awoke, he was no longer inside his ship. Strange towering figures surrounded him, their armor gleaming like polished stone, their glowing eyes fixed on him with a mix of curiosity and contempt. They spoke in a language sharp as thunder, but to his relief, a translator device quickly activated. "This is the human," one guard muttered. "Fragile creature." "Do not underestimate him yet," said another. Daniel tried to sit up, his body aching from the crash, but he forced a calm smile. "I am Captain Daniel Hayes of Earth. I come in peace." The guards exchanged looks before one of them spoke again. "You are now the guest, no, the prisoner of Queen Sarilith of the Zorathian Empire." The palace of Queen Sarilith was unlike anything Daniel had seen. Massive spires of black stone reached into the sky, each one covered in glowing runes. The halls were filled with warriors, nobles, and attendants who all bowed as Sarilith passed. She was tall, graceful, and carried an aura of power that silenced every voice in the chamber. When Daniel was brought before her throne, he felt the weight of her presence. Her silver skin shimmered under the light, and her eyes were a deep violet. Cold and sharp like blades, she studied him in silence for a long time. "So this is the human," she finally said. Her voice echoed through the hall, commanding yet curious. "You are smaller than I imagined. Your kind is not known for strength." Daniel stood tall, meeting her gaze. "Perhaps. But strength is not always measured by size." A ripple of surprise moved through the court. No one dared speak to the queen so directly, yet this fragile human had done so without fear. Sarilith raised one brow, intrigued. "You claim peace," she said slowly, "and yet your people expand into the stars. The Empire has heard of humans. We were told you are restless, bold, always searching for more." Daniel nodded. "That is true. But we also search for friendship and knowledge. My mission was not war. It was exploration." The queen leaned back in her throne. She had expected the human to tremble, to beg for mercy. Instead, he stood before her with steady eyes. It stirred something inside her, a flicker of curiosity she did not often feel. Days passed. Instead of being executed as some nobles demanded, Daniel was kept in the palace under close watch. Sarilith visited him often, questioning him about Earth, about humans, about their strange ways. "Why do humans build machines that take them so far from their home?" she asked one evening as they walked through the palace gardens. "Because we want to know what lies beyond," Daniel replied. "We want to learn, even if it means danger." The queen tilted her head. "Most species seek comfort. You seek challenge, that is unusual." Daniel smiled. "Maybe that is our strength." Her sharp gaze lingered on him as if weighing his words. Then came the proposal. Not from Daniel, but from Sarilith herself. The Zorathian Empire had enemies on all sides. A political marriage with a human was not only a symbol of peace with Earth, but also a clever way to surprise her rivals. No alien expected the queen of one of the strongest empires to bind herself to a human. One night before the High Council, Sarilith announced her decision. "This human will not remain a prisoner. He will be my consort. By my will, he will stand beside me as husband and ally." The court erupted in shock. Nobles whispered, some in outrage, some in fear. A human married to their queen? It was unthinkable. Daniel himself was stunned. He had not imagined this outcome. But as the queen looked at him with calm certainty, he realized this was not only about politics. It was also a test. She wanted to see if he would accept the challenge. With a deep breath, Daniel stepped forward. "If this is your will, then I accept. Not as a prisoner, but as a partner." The hall fell silent. Serlith's eyes widened slightly, not because he had accepted but because he had spoken as her equal. The wedding was swift and ceremonial. Alien chants echoed through the halls. Strange lights danced across the sky, and Daniel stood beside Serlith, the most powerful ruler he had ever met. Many nobles frowned, but none dared challenge the queen's command. To outsiders, Daniel was now the husband of the alien queen. But in truth, he knew this was only the beginning of a deeper test. Would he remain a symbol of weakness in the eyes of the Empire? Or would he prove that humans carried a power no one expected? As the night ended, Serlith turned to him in private. Her tone was calm but sharp. "You are my husband now, but do not think that title will protect you. You must prove yourself worthy of standing beside me. The Empire will not accept you otherwise." Daniel looked into her violet eyes without fear. "Then I will prove it. Not just for them, but for you." For the first time, the queen allowed herself a small, almost hidden smile. She did not say it, but in her heart she admitted something. This human was different. He was not afraid. He was not weak, and though she did not yet know it, she would soon discover the real power of her human husband. The palace of the Zarathian Empire was alive with whispers. Every corridor, every chamber, every hall carried the same talk. The queen has married a human. To many it was a sign of weakness. To some it was madness, and to a few it was a dangerous new move in politics. Queen Serlith sat in her council chamber, surrounded by generals, nobles, and advisors. Daniel stood beside her wearing formal robes of the Empire. His human form looked out of place among towering warriors and armored nobles. The council members did not hide their doubt. "Your Majesty," one general spoke, his voice like rolling thunder, "this human cannot lead soldiers. He has no strength, no training in our ways. Why place him by your side in council?" Serlith's violet eyes narrowed. "Because I will it." The general bowed but did not hide his scorn. Daniel remained silent, but he could feel the weight of their judgment. In that moment, he realized the queen had given him both an honor and a burden. She had made him her husband, but she had also placed him in a position where every eye would watch, waiting for him to fail. Later, as the council ended, Serlith turned to him. "Do you see their doubt, Daniel? They think you are unworthy. Even I—" She paused, her voice lower now. "Even I am not yet certain." Daniel met her gaze calmly. "Then give me the chance to prove it." The queen did not wait long to test him. The very next morning she summoned him to the palace training grounds. Rows of Zarathian soldiers stood ready, their weapons gleaming, their bodies tall and strong. These were warriors trained for years in combat. Daniel walked among them, feeling like a shadow among giants. "This is the human," Serlith announced to her troops. "He claims he is worthy to stand beside me. Today we will see." The soldiers laughed, their voices harsh. One stepped forward, his armor clanking. "Let me test him, my queen. One strike and he will fall." Serlith nodded. "Begin." The warrior lunged at Daniel with a heavy staff. Daniel had no alien weapon, only a simple practice rod given to him. He knew he could not match the soldier's strength. Instead, he relied on speed. As the staff came down, Daniel sidestepped and struck the warrior's knee with a quick move. The soldier stumbled. Gasps filled the air. Daniel did not try to overpower. He used timing, watching for small openings. 3 times the warrior attacked, and 3 times Daniel slipped away, landing light but clever strikes. At last, Serlith raised her hand. "Enough." The warrior bowed, breathing heavily. "He is fast, my queen." "Not strong but fast." Serlith studied Daniel. She expected him to collapse, but he stood steady, breathing calmly. Something stirred in her again, an unfamiliar feeling of respect. The queen gave him more trials. She brought him to the war council, where maps of distant battlefronts glowed across crystal tables. Generals spoke of brute force, massive fleets, and endless marches. Daniel studied the map quietly. Then he placed a hand near one glowing marker. "What if instead of attacking here directly, you send small units through this corridor of space? They could strike supply lines. Your enemy will weaken before the real battle begins." The generals frowned. "That is not our way. We fight with strength, not tricks." Daniel shook his head. "Sometimes the clever path is stronger than the obvious one. On Earth, small armies have defeated larger ones by striking where they are least expected." Silence followed. The queen leaned forward, her eyes fixed on him. "Explain further." Daniel described old battles from Earth's history, guerrilla warfare, ambushes, surprise maneuvers. The generals listened, some with interest, others with disbelief. To them it was dishonorable, but to Sarilith it was new. After the council, she walked with Daniel through the palace halls. "Your ways are strange, human. You do not fight like us. You do not think like us. Yet," she paused, "perhaps that is why you may be useful." Daniel smiled slightly. "Different is not always weakness. Sometimes it is strength." But not everyone was convinced. That night, as Daniel rested in his chamber, he felt a shift in the air. Shadows moved. A dagger gleamed in the dark. Assassins. Daniel reacted instantly. Rolling aside, he grabbed a small lamp from the table and smashed it into.